Hey guys, how are we doing? Welcome back to another coffee morning with Paul. Although being still the Easter weekend, it's a little bit later than usual yet again, as it was on Friday. So maybe it's more of a brunch or a lunch for you guys, but still a quick discussion anyway, right? So I've got a question for you. What is one of the similarities between banking and motorsports? Two of my favorite subjects. Well, the answer is regulations. Now, we can see why there are regulations and strict regulations both in motorsports and in banking. I mean, in motorsports, it's a dangerous sport. You want to make sure that the cars and the teams are not only just competing on a level playing ground, but also as safe as possible. And break those regulations, it costs the teams and the drivers heavy fines and penalty points. In banking, we have regulations because it keeps the financial backbone of the world, our economy, as stable as possible, and it also keeps the customers and their money hopefully as safe as possible. Now in racing, we can see examples of when regulations are seen to have been broken. There was an example last year during the F1 season 2020 where the team Racing Point got fined $500,000 and I think got deducted 15 points in regards to their braking ducts. Now, whether they were failing or cheating against the regulations or not, it's not a discussion I'm going to get involved in, right? There's a lot there that you can read about. It was a point sort of on the edge as to whether they were breaking the rules or not. But there's good reasons for the regulations to be there. Now, the same with banking. You have regulations, global regulations set by, for instance, EBA, which is the European Banking Authority. And they also have heavy fines for the banks should they fail to follow the regulations. In banking, very often we see banks getting fined quite heavily around AML, anti-money laundering, when criminals are managing to launder money through bank accounts, etc., and the banks are failing to pick this up. Again, I mean, in both regulatory cases, be that banking or motorsports, there is a global regulator that sets global regulations. And then if you're racing, for instance, in a local country, there will be a local authority that might have amendments or additions to the global regulations that you have to follow. So for me, when I'm racing, I race under the AKK regulations here in Finland. And in the UK, for instance, if you're racing, you follow under the regulations of the MSA. Actually, I think they changed name recently to Motorsports UK, but it used to be called MSA. And the same with banking. So you've got, for instance, here in the Euro region, you've got the European Banking Authority, which sets the regulations for the Eurozone. And then the central banks or the conduct authorities, central authorities, will have amendments or additions to those European regulations. So in the UK, you've got the FCA as an example. All right. So why am I sitting here holding a fire extinguisher? Well, it turned out as I'm getting my car ready for this year's racing season, that my fire extinguisher that I have in my racing car no longer actually abides to the FIA regulations. It's a good system. It's kept me safe. I haven't needed it yet, but it's kept me safe for all of my races. But the FIA have decided to improve on the regulations around fire suppressant systems, and therefore I need to replace it. It works. It is perfectly safe for all intents and purposes, but I need to change it. So that's a regulation that's updated that I need to follow. It goes the same for banks. As banks get told on an ongoing basis that they need to update their regulations. And this very often comes from the fact that an event has happened and the authorities have decided to review their regulations and update them to try and make them better, because progress happens all the time. In the case of banks, you've got a lot more dependency on digital services, for instance, which means that the whole world of cybersecurity, AML through digital banking, etc., requires the need for updated regulations. in racing, I mean, yet again, last year, for those of you who follow Formula One, we had that horrendous crash at the start of the Bahrain race where Romain Grosjean, racing for Hans, crashed into the barrier at the start at a horrendous pace, and his car burst into flames. Luckily, he survived. He burnt his hands and feet, but that was almost a miracle, right? And having seen that, I will gladly upgrade my fire extinguisher in my car. I never want to end up in that situation. So, regulations, love them or hate them, they are there for a very good reason. And we should be, as consumers of any bank, quite thankful and happy for the fact that the regulations are there. What we could do with is some of the banks getting better at managing the regulations and finding ways of streamlining the use of the regulations. But it's getting there. Have a good one, guys. Talk to you again soon.